afternoon and welcome back to the GSA Executives Podcast with your host, Caitlin Tye. And today we're excited to have on Jenna Harris, who's the head of co-living at Harris Associates. How are you today, Jenna?
Brilliant. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much for being on. Just to kind of kick things off then, could you give me a brief background on kind of how you've got to the position where you are today?
Yeah, so interestingly, out of university, my brother and I started a app, so like a startup, and we developed that, launched that in the UK and the US, which focused mostly on kind of digital marketing.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that was a really informative part of, even though it's totally detached, kind of real estate, people would be like, what is the connection then?
Yeah.
What I suppose when we pivoted into real estate that we really identified about the space was the fact that it really hadn't come a long way in terms of how people talk about real estate and how people market assets.
Yeah.
And really identifying that there was a bit of a missed opportunity there and a real gap for someone to come in and say, you know, here's all the experience and all the knowledge, but let's kind of power that up and partner that with, you know, best-in-class marketing.
Yeah.
And what can that then evolve to look like?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really informed, you know, getting into the sector and why we kind of wanted to get into the sector.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, I suppose, the living sectors, how that kind of evolved was coming into Harris Associates, which was obviously an established business before we came in.
Yeah.
I focused very much on, you know, the office, central London trophy assets, and looking at how we could, I suppose, pivot that into the living sectors and really seeing how the living sector started kind of taking off in PBSA. Now we're in BTR and co-living as well, and really excited about the living sector and everything that kind of goes with that, and how we can evolve, you know, what we've been doing for the past kind of 20 years in the space.
Yeah.
Into the living sectors, and then bringing in that new energy of how we kind of elevate the marketing offering and really cut through the noise in terms of what other projects people are putting out there.
Oh, fantastic. You must have a close relationship with your brother then, if you're able to work with him in the office.
You know, most people can't really understand how you could work with a sibling, but I find that it's actually a really amazing dynamic to have, because I think you have that, you know, inherent trust there.
Yes.
That you know each other so well.
Yeah.
That immediately you know kind of each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I think what's amazing about our partnership is almost that in many ways his strengths are my weaknesses and my strengths are his weaknesses. So we're able to kind of balance each other like that. So yeah, it works really well for us, but definitely not for everyone.
Oh gosh, yeah, I can see some people just saying
it's not for them.
That'd be my worst nightmare.
No.
Do not want to do that at all. So I know obviously that you're an advocate for gender diversity and have helped achieve a 50-50 workforce at Harris Associates. Could you share with us the importance of this within the workplace?
Yeah, so I think that, you know, having a really balanced group of people is so important, because, you know, if you think about creating an environment that is incredibly kind of dynamic and creative, but then only having people that think a certain way, have lived a certain way, it's so limiting to what actually is reflective of what's out there in the world. So I think it's really, really important to have a diverse workforce, you know, and have women not only in, you know, roles, but also management roles, because, you know, women bring a really different perspective to the market.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I was talking about kind of with Jamie and I's dynamic, it's, you know, not obviously all of those strengths and weaknesses are gendered, of course they're not, but it's so important to have a breadth of ideas. And I think the more you limit the amount of people that are different within your workforce,
Yeah.
then you limit the amount of creativity you have, and you're not really doing yourself or your business justice because you're not opening up to all those different perspectives that are out there.
Yeah, because obviously everyone's had different experiences, different upbringing. So everyone, not necessarily all of them are going to be right ideas, but it's always good to kind of, as you say, get a more, well, a larger range of ideas and then be able to pick from them and then hopefully making you better than your competitors.
Yeah, and be able to, challenge each other and, come at things from different perspectives and give it a real kind of breadth, I suppose, that you don't get if you're just choosing people who kind of think the same way.
Yeah, you don't want kind of just the yes person to be like, oh yes, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we'll all agree with that. Brilliant. And then and as I say, a competitor think of another idea and think, well, why didn't we come up with that? But yeah, no, I definitely. So obviously with being in a very senior position within a male-dominated industry, how would you say even, but has that impacted you?
So I think, look, everyone has really different experiences of the sector. I grew up in a very kind of male-dominated household.
Right.
I learned to kind of find my own voice very early on.
You had to.
Yeah, I had to. And I've always been really lucky to be able to be in a very supportive work environment where it's kind of, there's no idea, it's a bad idea, just bring your ideas.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that's actually a really important thing to instill in the people that work with you, is that, share, and we want to hear what you've got to say.
Yes.
And the worst that can happen is that we don't end up implementing an idea, but everyone's going to be kind, everyone's going to be receptive. Yeah. That's the kind of dynamic that we create the business. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had particularly bad experience in my own space.
That's good, yeah.
But of course, when you step out of that space and you go and meet external people and things like that, there are often, I suppose, what do you call it? I suppose preconceptions of who you are, and I really do empathize with people that don't have the same environment where they're able to just, come to work confidently and share their ideas, and perhaps feel quite kind of suppressed in an environment where doesn't appreciate their creativity.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of work needs to be done in terms of, building women's confidence.
Yeah, literally that word confidence is going through my mind there. Yeah, 100%. Because obviously I know in the workplace itself, a lot of things still need to be changed. But as you say, confidence within females, diverse candidates themselves, we need to empower them further as well.
Yeah, and I think, what's a shame is that people could have really bright minds already in their teams, but if they haven't given them the platform to share, or feel confident to share, then it's a shame, because it's just talent that hasn't been brought to light.
Exactly.
So I think what needs to be done, across the board in terms of making people feel comfortable and confident in order to speak up, and almost taking, I think, the formality out of things.
Yeah. Yeah, because then obviously that makes people a bit more relaxed, and then hopefully that then gives them going back to confidence to be able to express their ideas and kind of give their opinion to projects and things like that. So that can obviously help make the project even better or more efficient and things like that.
And I think, the ways in which you can do these things are so simple, but, instead of telling someone in order to present an idea to you, they need to go off and put a pitch deck together and come in and pitch, like create an environment where you can go out for a coffee and just have a chat.
Yeah.
I think really makes a huge difference in terms of how approachable you are, and how, you want to be seen by your team in terms of collaborative ideas and wanting to get the best out of people as well.
Yeah. Well, as you say, going out for a coffee, it just takes out a lot of pressure, and kind of, I know me preparing for a pitch or anything like that, it's like, even if you may have met than before. As say, if you're doing it to your team, it's automatically just for hearing that word. It's like, oh my
and
gosh,
you
this
feel
needs to be perfect.
You're kind of, you're being like judged in a, it's all, there's so many barriers that I think could hold people back from actually getting the best out of them.
Exactly. So more relaxed environment.
More coffees, less pictures.
Not too many though. Otherwise you won't be able to sit still. So do you feel that the diversity gap has decreased? And if so, how could be improved in the workplace?
Yes, I think it kind of adds on to what we were saying before. I think it has decreased, but I think obviously there's always going to be a lot more work to do.
Yeah.
But I think what's really nice to see is a lot of young people coming into the industry.
Yeah.
I think what there needs to be more of is representation in terms of management roles.
Yes.
More, I think, mentorship programs, which enable people to, in a way, like buddy up and learn from people that have been in the industry, for a long time and how they got to where they are.
Yeah.
I think things like this are really good in terms of, people being able to listen to podcasts and be inspired and just listen to different people's journeys. I think the sad thing for, the generation coming through now is they always see the end result.
But it's the stepping stones of how do they get there? It's like, oh gosh, that looks like a really cool job. But it's like, but where do I even begin?
Or you'll just see someone that's like, mid-30s, super successful. And you're like, oh my God, like, but you don't realize that, they might have had problems at school. They might have not made it through university. They might have, taken them 5 years to find their feet in the industry. Everyone has their own journey.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to share that journey, to inform people, show them that it's not so easy.
Yeah. It's not just an overnight thing how you've got here.
Yeah, for sure. And just show how, I suppose, like it takes that determination. And even if people end up where they are, and that is super aspirational, I don't think there's anything more inspirational than listening to how people got there.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And it's always intriguing. I mean, I love to chat anyways, but it's always just interesting to kind of hear other people's experiences from kind of different ways of life and things like that. And figure, even if you may not necessarily want to go into what they're doing, it's just interesting to know how they've got there, to tell friends, family, and things like that.
I think as well with the, like, back to kind of the confidence point, I think it's about also, encouraging women within the workplace to go for the roles that they perhaps are already qualified for, but they're not putting themselves forward for.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time there's kind of that imposter syndrome. Do I belong here? Am I good enough? That is felt, I think, quite deeply. And, it's a process, but I think if you can be supported at work and encouraged and feel like people are championing you at work, then you're going to feel confident to say, I think I'm now ready for my next role.
The next step. Yeah. Yeah. Because I definitely think, well, as being a female, the imposter syndrome is such a big thing. Even if you do get told, oh, you've done this really well, or you've smashed that target, you still internally go, oh, well, I probably could have done that better. You've kind of a bit of perfectionism as well, I think. And kind of obviously not saying that you have to go around every single day and go, end of the day, gold star and things like that. But just as you say, boosting that confidence a bit more to say, yeah, maybe you should apply for that. Like, you'd be a great fit sort of thing.
And only when you've done things well, I think, that's another thing. Not being apologetic when you've done something well.
Yes.
Oh, thanks. I did get help from XYZ on it, or I did, it wasn't all me, or, like things like that. But I think that's it's a way of just not owning
that
the achievement.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we need to get better at that, owning our achievements. Yeah.
Well, talking of achievements, what would you say is your biggest achievement to date?
So I think really kind of, I suppose, something I'm super proud of is, pioneering, I think, this new way of looking at real estate with marketing at the forefront.
Mhm.
I think, we've only just begun, and there's so much more that we're kind of super excited about doing in the space. But I think starting that ball rolling and seeing, other companies follow suit is really exciting, and, something I'm really proud of. And it makes me kind of think of one of my favorite quotes is a Henry Ford quote. And if he said, if you asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So I really believe in that in terms of bringing new things to the industry. I think you can't let people tell you what it is that they want. You have to show them what they need.
Yes. Yeah.
And, it was in my lifetime that we didn't even think we'd have emails on our phones and all these things that now we can live without. But
can't think of anything
you would
different.
never have said that's something we need.
Yeah.
So, I think being ahead of the kind of curb and always looking at what's to come, not being afraid to kind of pioneer.
Yeah. Well, obviously, kind of, you've clearly got the eye for it, kind of obviously starting the app and then finding that niche and then getting to kind of where you are. Clearly know what you're doing.
I think, you've got to do something. I know it's so cliche, but you have to do something you really believe in.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it all filters down from there. But I think that, you've got to kind of be passionate about your why and why you're getting up every day, why you're going to work, and what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
So
yeah, even though not every day is going to be a great day.
Exactly.
Don't get me wrong.
No,
you're going to come home and be
definitely
why
not.
am I doing this? Or this project hasn't worked. But it's also right, well, you've got to kind of to use it as motivation, as thinking, right, well,
Absolutely.
how has this gone wrong? And then be like, right, okay, this is what I'm going to do to change, to make it better, or how I'm going to do this differently. So yeah, it's about having that passion. I definitely agree with that, because I mean, I get excited to come to work and things like that, and kind of, as you say, being a pioneer and looking out for the next thing. And it must be amazing to kind of see other companies kind of following your footsteps, as you say, and the fact that you're proud of it and you're embracing that you're proud. That's great.
Yeah. No, it's really exciting. It's really exciting. I think that, real estate's kind of been overlooked as such kind of, it's such a dynamic industry. It's such an exciting industry. It's all around us all the time. It's something you can't get away from.
Yeah, it's never going to go anytime soon.
And I think that people can relate to it in so many different ways, but we're incredibly excited about it.
Brilliant. So kind of on the flip side of that, what would you say is your biggest challenge you've had to overcome then during your career?
So I think it's a funny one, this one, because I think people ask this question, not to criticize the question, but as if it's, that there are kind of these huge obstacles that are always put in the way.
Yeah.
But I think it's quite not, I don't want to say constant, but there are constant challenges, to be honest.
Yeah.
There are constant challenges, and it is an everyday thing. And I think it's a mindset as opposed to sieving out one experience. But I think, for example, using challenges, like you were saying before, to kind of inspire opportunities.
Yes. Yeah.
Being self-critical, but not unkind.
Yeah. Not in a damaging way. Yeah.
And I think having the ability as well, when you've got people working for you, to have a bad day, to, not get the transaction you're pitching on, not have a transaction go your way, and be able to remotivate everyone.
Yeah.
Get everyone back at the table, get everyone re-inspired, get everyone excited again. And, get everyone kind of fired up for the next day.
Exactly.
And I think those are kind of the daily challenges that one faces when, you're kind of evolving and growing a business, but also making sure that everyone's happy and everyone remains kind of inspired by what everyone's doing, and not letting those challenges ever, I suppose, overwhelm your purpose.
Yeah, making sure that you're able to bounce back.
Yeah.
Because no one's perfect, sadly.
No.
Everyone's not going to
Absolutely.
hit the pitch every
No.
time, and every project isn't going to go perfectly. But then that's how you learn. That's how you make it
Absolutely.
next time, as I said before, much better. Or you've got to learn from your mistakes, and you've got to make sure that you can't let them get you down too much. It's kind of, I always have in my head, it's like, right, if I've done something wrong or if something hasn't gone as well, it's like I give myself like 10 minutes to be wallowing self-pity.
Yeah.
As the Grinch would say.
Yeah.
And then it'd be like, right, okay, that's done. What can I learn from this going forward? And making sure that I don't make that mistake again. And that's the key thing. It's being like, this is what I've done wrong. How am I not going to do it again? How is this going to help me kind of doing future projects and things like that? So are there any changes you'd like to bring to the industry at all?
Yeah, I think we're kind of, I suppose we're in this period of change, which I was kind of referring to before, but bringing real estate, I think, kind of into the 21st century, interacting with the digital world, interacting with, things like AI, VR, how can these platforms feed into our business and make them, more effective and more up to date? And I think that is what really excites me about the change that's happening in the industry. And I think if you look at, the tech sector, how far ahead it is to something like real estate.
Yeah.
But really no justification for why there's such a gap.
Yeah.
So I think, bridging that gap is going to be a really exciting journey.
Yeah.
I think change is going to be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, and I think it happens so quickly as well that it's just like once the ball starts rolling, it's like, right, okay, we're on board. We gotta go straight. Yeah. And I think, well, as you mentioned, things like AI, how
incredible
quickly that's gonna, I mean, it's everywhere now. I feel like 5 years ago, I hadn't even heard of it. Like you'd heard talk about it, but kind of within the industry, it was like, right, well, how is this really going to affect me? Whereas now it's like, oh my gosh, AI is going to take over the world.
Also, I think the opinion of it as well is so interesting because, I think there was such a fear around it. Like, oh, people going to be replaced?
Yeah.
Am I going to be needed in my job? But I think the truth is it's going to make people more efficient at what they do and be able to do exactly the things that are integral to their business, but make input output a hell of a lot easier.
Exactly. It's about looking at the positives and what you can get from AI and being like, right, okay, well, what can I do with support from AI rather than thinking of it as the enemy?
It's like aiding as opposed to replacing.
Exactly. So do you have any personal professional goals that you'd like to kind of get within the next 5 years?
Yes, I think our mentality at the moment is like a real growth mentality.
Yeah.
Growing kind of physically in terms of our teams, our sectors, but also growing our kind of offering in the space. And I think just reinforcing that attitude of kind of never resting on our laurels, always pushing for innovation and being kind of one step ahead is, I'd say, what our kind of aspirations are in terms of the next couple of years.
Brilliant. It's always about having that motivation, looking for that next, right, what's the next goal? Because want to obviously continue as kind of leading the trend. You don't want
Yeah.
to take the back foot. So it's like,
No.
right,
And-
I've
and-
made my mark now.
Yeah.
This is me going
And
forward.
you know, it's a big thing, I think, to put your hole in the sand. What's the saying? Can't remember. What it says. But I suppose, like, you know, saying that this is what we're bringing to the space, and constantly having to be at the forefront of that is kind of a challenge in itself.
Yeah, oh,
But
definitely.
it's an exciting one. It's always going to keep us thinking about what's next. And yeah, I think within the living sectors, there are so many exciting things going on at the moment where, you know, there's office buildings that have been vacant that are now offering themselves up to conversions to, you know, co-living or BTR or PBSA. And there's always change within the industry.
It's never just
No,
easy sailing.
It's never just easy sailing, but there's always different opportunities that arise because of it. And I think so long as you look at it like that, you'll always be able to make the best of it.
Exactly. Take advantages of those changes rather than take the back seat and then panic.
Yeah.
And I think everyone else is doing this and I haven't even looked at it. Yeah.
Cool.
So what would you say, what do you enjoy most actually about working at Harris Associates?
So I think coming into a workplace where I hope everyone's
saying this like, oh gosh,
like super excited to be there, that they constantly are kind of getting inspired, coming in with kind of fresh new ideas, and really creating, I suppose, a platform for people to not just do their kind of day to day, but give them the opportunity to be part of something a bit more.
Yeah, give them that freedom sort of thing.
Yeah, and you know, not having that, well, you need to be at this level before you come to us and think about how to evolve the business, or, you know, add a new element to our business, or we just don't have that attitude. We're just very much like, you know, if you have an idea, come to us. And I think that creates a really nice environment to work in because, you know, people have such amazing ideas.
Yeah, at all levels.
All the
as
time.
Well. Yeah.
All the time. Even if it's something you can't implement. You know, even if it's something that, you know, you wish you could do, but you can't do right now, or, you know, you could see in the future, but you can't kind of press go right now. I don't think there's any negative to creating an environment where people want to inspire and are inspired.
Yeah.
So I love that energy of coming to work. I think what's so interesting about the dynamic we've created is that, you know, it is a kind of 20-year-old plus business, but we have got this real kind of startup mentality.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what I love about it.
And having that freedom, and I mean, like freedom of speech, you have that in every day-to-day life. So why not have it in the office? Kind of, obviously, there's always going to be a corporate structure, but still, as you say, everyone has ideas. So,
yeah, and you can't guarantee you're going to do everything.
Oh, of course. You can't say yes to everything.
But you can guarantee that you will hear everything.
Yeah. So, and then just decide, picking the best ideas to kind of use and go forward with. Yeah. So what would you say Harris Associates' biggest strength is towards its competitors?
So I think kind of identifying, I suppose, how marketing interjects with investment expertise and then a global network is probably, I think, our triangle of strength. We have a global partnership with a Singaporean based agency called Caitlin Tye, and they've got about 400 agents across Asia.
Oh, wow.
And that's been amazing for us because it really opens up, you know, Asian capital. We get to speak to investors directly, educate them on the UK market.
Yeah.
And you know, bring them in. So I think that's been an incredible asset. and definitely a USP of ours. And it's so interesting to speak to them because some concepts like co-living, for example, have existed for a lot longer over there. And, therefore they're much more kind of ready to deploy capital because they don't need to be told. It's, they know it works.
Yeah, they've got that experience.
Exactly.
You can learn from them, and also kind of, as you said, vice versa.
Absolutely. So I think that kind of cross collaboration of knowledge as well as investment is also another one of our USPs, as well as that kind of marketing and investment expertise cross section that we also have.
Brilliant. Working as a team. It's all about communicating.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I understand that you've recently released a co-living report and a property podcast that educate and inspire industry professionals. Could you give kind of 3 helpful pointers which you could give to aspiring listeners?
Yeah, so the reason why we kind of did the report was because we wanted to really help kind of educate the market on co-living and some of the misinterpretations of the sector.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting for us is taking investors around living, breathing, co-living buildings is kind of when the other shoe drops.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, now we get it. This is fantastic.
The light bulb goes ping.
Yeah, it really is that light bulb moment. But it's like, how do you do something whereby you're effectively giving people that level of access, but you're not having to tour thousands of people around the schemes? So we really thought the report was such a good example of giving people a document whereby, it really informs everything from, how to build or design co-living to what the residents, what the resident profile actually is, and really opens up to all those points that would influence an investment into the sector. So that's kind of why we did the report. And then the podcast, we really wanted to give people, and we were actually talking about this before we started, but giving people access to people's journey within the space and how they got to where they are is so important. And I think that really lays the foundation for people wanting to inquire into the industry, to get into the industry. And I don't think there's been enough of that. So it's something that we love doing, talking to different, really inspiring people and hearing their journey and how that can, inspire other people. So I think I suppose what I've taken away from that experience and talking to people who have done incredible things with their careers is kind of always be inquisitive.
Yes.
I think that if you can go through life asking questions, you're always going to be better off whatever industry you're in.
Yeah, I always say no question's a bad question. Unless you ask the same question repeatedly. Then it's like, okay, I've told you this about 5 times already. But yeah, you always ask questions. Like if we ever get any new starters and things like that, I'm like, look, I will always answer a question. Even if I don't necessarily know the answer, I can find you someone who can do, because you're going to learn from it. If you don't ask, you don't get.
For sure. And I think also just knowing that no one has all the answers.
Yeah.
So also not being intimidated by the fact that you have, say you're starting a role and you have so many questions, or, you feel like someone, that sits next to your work that's been there for a lot longer has all the answers. No one has all the answers.
Yeah.
Not even kind of the greatest minds that are out there. So I think it's something to like lean into, but also to, in a way, kind of like relax into.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to know everything.
Yeah.
But all you can do is continue asking questions.
Exactly. That's how you live.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I suppose the second kind of point I would say would be like, don't be afraid to do things differently.
Yeah.
And believe in yourself. I think when you do things differently, there's always going to be people who, just want the status quo to kind of prevail.
Mm-hmm.
But the greatest things that have happened in our lifetime wouldn't be so if people hadn't kind of broken the mold.
Exactly. Don't be a sheep.
Yeah. And, be confident in your conviction as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, not every idea is going to be successful, but, if you're passionate about something, you're probably going to be more successful at that than just, feeling like you're not where you should be.
Yeah.
And then I guess my third one is just kind of remain inspired, whether that's podcasts you listen to, whether it's the people you kind of talk to and surround yourself with, books you read. I think we're so lucky because inspiration is all around us all the time.
Yes, yeah.
But actually just plugging into that and, taking away something from each day where you're like, it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
That you love, that you know that now. I think that's such a nice, you see a great advert or you watch a great documentary or, you listen to a great podcast. I think you have that. I think it makes you feel good because you're inspired. And I don't think there's many greater feelings than that.
Kind of just reflecting from your day. Yeah. No, definitely agree. And I guess all three kind of pointers takes it back to the start about how everyone has different experiences and how you can learn from everyone, which is obviously why having diversity in the workplace
is
so important. Yeah. It's a great round of this. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Jenna, for being on the podcast today.
Thank
you
for having me.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the GSC Executives Podcast. Today's conversation was hosted and recorded by Caitlin Tye, with editing and production managed by Stephen Smith. The podcast is produced by GSC Executives in conjunction with Daniel Owen Limited. For more details about our executive search solutions, as well as upcoming episodes, please visit our website, gscexecutives.co.uk. If you're keen to hear more industry insights, please consider subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Until next time, continue to lead with excellence.